What would be most useful for you to discuss regarding your personal statement?
Well, I guess how to format it to give the admissions committee the ability to see who I am and the obstacles I've overcome. Also, the things that I have accomplished by overcoming those obstacles, and also what will make me a good candidate for law school.
Sure, absolutely. I think those are good goals to have. Now, in reading over your personal statement, how long do you think it takes us to get to you specifically?
Ooh, okay. That's a great question. Cause I know for a fact that like I was applying last year for the admission cycle, but then I was like, okay, let's wait. I did review my personal statement. I do know that I do talk a lot about like my background and my family a lot before I even get to me and what I've actually accomplished. So I knew that you were gonna probably ask that question.
Yeah. So when I was looking at this, you mentioned like briefly like your DNA of your forebears and such, but then you're talking about celebrities and examples of role models or examples, right?
Hmm.
But we're not getting to you until really the second half of that second page. I
Right.
started thinking about law school as a teenager. Everything before that to me, it's quite general.
Okay. So it should be so basically I should start out in the from the very beginning, just discussing me, how I always wanted to attend law school and basically, the accomplishments and things that I've made like that.
Yeah, so I would start off by talking about you specifically, and of course, you do want to answer the why law school question
Right.
at some point. So honestly, I would scrap the first page and a half because it's not about you.
Okay.
When you get into yourself personally, though, a lot of this becomes like different parts of your resume, right? You
Mhm.
talk about your career goals, a 4-year degree, college, then the master's degree, and some of your work there. But we're not getting deep enough. I think this is overall running the risk of telling rather than showing.
Okay.
It's a little bit formal, it's a little bit too objective. I want us to see the world through your eyes and gain the insights that you gained. And I think you can do that. The experience that you have is there. Your nonprofit work could be a good opening to talk about why law school, and especially, of course, your role as an advocate. You're helping underserved kids, you're helping them with education, you're helping them find jobs, and you have a passion for social justice. I want that to shine through much more.
Okay.
So, could you pick one story? Could you tell one story about one kid that you helped or one insight you had about your work in nonprofit management, which I would imagine is an area that has tons of bureaucracy?
Yeah, it does. That's yeah, I didn't think about to choose like one story because I have so many. Growing up where I grew up on the south side of Chicago and witnessing the things that I have witnessed, helping those same type of students, like they all have so many stories. So I guess you're right. I have to figure out one story to tell.
Think about it this way. So, you have statistics, we know all kinds of information about the number of people dying each year from malaria or suffering from homelessness or poverty or things like that. But what do TV commercials do? They highlight one particular story. They have that
That's
one
true.
heart wrenching photo or video of that kid, and that makes people open their wallets in a way that numbers never could.
That's true.
And I'm not saying you necessarily want to like play on their emotions in that way, but you do want to capture their interest. And the way you capture their interest is by telling a story, giving some specifics, and then showing from there. I was trying to help this one kid, but bureaucracy got in the way and I had to look up the rules and regulations, something along those lines.
It's interesting you say that because as someone who works in higher education and works in the financial aid office, I do know for a fact one thing that always bothered me was the fact that DACA students could not get financial aid. And it was nothing that they did personally. It was the fact that their parents weren't US citizens. So they weren't US, so they couldn't get it. And it just used to always break my heart to have to tell them, like, unfortunately, there's nothing we can really do for you, because I just feel like it's unfair. We're punishing the children because the parents wanted to have them have a better life. And now they can't even get that because how are they going to go to school? So I used to always hate that. Like that was one thing I was like, oh, I really don't want to go out here and talk to the student, but I have no choice. I can't bend the rules. It's a federal law. I can't change it. I can't say, well, we're going to give you a little bit. I just couldn't do it. And it used to always break my heart because a lot of those students did really want a better life, but they was like, I have to drop all my classes. There's no way I can pay for this. So.
And it's a story that you should tell. I want to see that come out. I want to see that frustration come out where you're, in a way, you're hitting a wall. And then you use that as fuel to help you want to become an advocate. You want to help serve those kids. Maybe you even want to change laws. Maybe you want to find ways to work to better help those kids, even within the laws. Maybe there are some regulations or some loopholes that you could discover through your research that could help them advocate for themselves as best as possible.
Okay.
But jump right in. If you're working with DACA students, that's a great starting off point. I want to see that first and foremost, right up front. You don't need to talk about Oprah or Condoleezza Rice or anyone else like that. You have your own story to tell. Focus on that.
Okay.
And go deep on this. Don't list the high school debate. You don't need to cover that. Focus specifically on your role in nonprofit work, nonprofit management, helping students, helping families, and specifically through the legal lens. You want to show them that you have a real understanding of the law. I know you mentioned that you don't know any lawyers, but you do know what it's like to deal with the consequences of laws.
Yes.
And so even if you are not a lawyer yourself, of course, you still have a sense of how these regulations and rules, how the general regulations have very concrete consequences for real people. And I think law schools, they want to see that. They want to see that you know what law is actually like and what the consequences are actually like. In law school, you'll be dealing with fact patterns, real world situations that you have to interpret through the lens of the various principles that could apply. And you've seen that on the ground. You've experienced that. You've seen your clients experience that. And so you can show that you do know what law is like. You do know what the practice of law is like, even if you haven't done it yet.
So do you recommend then, Steve? Because I always struggle with, I'm always that type of person, like I really want them to be engaged when they read my personal statement. So I guess I struggle with how to capture them like from the first, because I don't want them to be bored when they start reading like, oh, this is, bland. I want to capture them when I first, I guess, start like my intro, because I was always taught like, oh, you want to kind of grab them when they first start reading. Do you suggest that I start out by telling the story of I guess how I can definitely see how laws affect people that I've worked with?
You can just jump right in. You don't need to say, through my work, I've seen how laws can affect people. Just say, one of the hardest things I ever had to do was tell this 18-year-old kid they had to drop out of college because they couldn't get financial aid because they were DACA. And you could say, this particular student was studying XYZ topic, and you don't need to go into a ton of detail about them, but a little bit of detail can make the story come alive more.
Okay.
Then you can explain how you were on this hunt to figure out what exactly was holding them back. You knew the DACA recipient, they were undocumented, and so they weren't eligible for this particular type of loan.
Okay.
Then you could zoom out a little bit and talk about your role in nonprofits, what you were doing, why were you in this position?
Okay.
And so how have you run up into these walls?
So when I talk about my roles in nonprofits and how I was in those positions, is this where I start talking about like some of the things that I've established while I was there? Because, working at a college, we took on the task of trying to kind of eliminate food insecurity with regards to students on campus. So I was one of the people that spearheaded the first meal pantry that we had on campus for our students. So do I talk about that in there, or should something like that be kind of like left for like my resume with regards to my leaderships and my accomplishments and the things that I've, accomplished while at work?
It's a great question. So you definitely want them to know about the meal pantry, but unless you can directly tie it to the story that you're telling,
okay,
I wouldn't include it. Trust They will read the resume, they will see it there, but anything directly tied to that story is fair game if you can relate it. I just don't want you to run the risk of laundry listing everything you've done in your position that is impressive.
Okay. Now, what would you say would be the most appropriate length for a personal statement? Because I know you saw mine and it was pretty lengthy. So, what would you say is the most appropriate length for a personal statement, or does it vary school to school?
Typically, you're looking to make it no more than 2 pages double
Okay.
spaced. So I would suggest, like I said, chop out the first page and a half because that wasn't really about you.
Okay.
Then rewrite a draft with this feedback in mind.
Okay.
And that new rough draft could once again be 3 pages or 4 pages. And then you will have to aggressively chop it down so that every word counts. But I want the new rough draft to be all about you and all about your work specifically in this
Okay.
nonprofit role.
Okay. So I'll make sure to do that. I'm trying to think if I had some more questions too, because um, so once I do, so it should be all about me, all about my work in nonprofits. So it was a part in there about, I guess my daughter. So should that be scratched out too? Because I put a part at the bottom about, I basically that was part of my why of why I'm going. Should that be scratched out too as well?
If you're not able to relate it to the main topic, I
Okay.
wouldn't include it. I do think some of the themes in this draft related to your background and diversity and such, you could include that in a diversity statement.
That okay. Okay.
But just do everything you can to keep it personal. So definitely no quotes. And there are ways to reference role models, but you've got to tie it into yourself.
To the story. Okay. Okay. Well, this was very helpful, extremely helpful. So I got some writing to do.
Yeah. I'm really glad we connected, Brittany.
Me too.
Before we sign off, what would you say is the biggest insight you got from our call today?
Um, that my personal statement really should be about me, and it also helped me realize that I actually have really accomplished some things in my previous work history. Because honestly, at first I was like, I don't even know exactly if the things that I have done are considered grand enough for law school, but speaking with you, it actually makes me believe that it really is, because I didn't think about telling a story about some of the experiences that I've had, and it just made me remember about how I really do feel when I have to tell these students that I can't give them any money for school, and how that actually does tie into how the law is actually working against them. So this was definitely insightful.
Glad I was able to help. Please keep in touch and let me know if you need anything as you move forward.
I will do. Thank you.
My pleasure, Brittany. Take care.
You too.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.